Josh, you want to come up? Our next presenter is Josh Hans. And Josh, I know others have heard your story, but this is the first time we as a church get to hear your story. So tell your story.
Thanks. On? All right, everybody can hear me. Having a hard time right now, so I'm pretty emotional. That song we just sang is exactly what Jesus has done for my life. This absolutely terrifies me to do this, and about a year, the first year of walking with Jesus, he made it very clear he doesn't care about my fears of doing this. So this is kind of my ministry. This is what I do now. Seems to be growing more and more. So let's just get to it. I'm from Seward. Originally, was born in Seward, and growing up, I grew up in a church around Christians. Heard about Jesus quite a bit, and but I didn't really believe. I thought it was just a story. I was more into science and everything else. I just didn't believe, and so what that did was kind of open the door for me at an early age. I get into heavy metal music, hardcore heavy metal music, and I can remember early on that one of my favorite bands was Iron Maiden, and they sang a lot about the Beast. And not being a believer, I didn't realize what I was doing by singing along with that, listening to that as I was opening the door to the enemy. And so I had a really low self-esteem, and in school I felt inferior and felt really small and little, and so I thought the way to combat that was to act tough, to be the tough guy, to be the scary guy. And so what I would do is I would draw pentagrams, and I had the heavy metal music, and I had this rough exterior that I wanted to portray. And again, that was just opening the door to something that I wasn't aware was real. And so as I got a little bit older, and about 12 years old, I was introduced to using a Ouija board and doing seances and stuff like that with my friends, and we thought it was cool when the table would lift up or when things would fly off the shelf, and we were kind of just fascinated by it and thought it was just something cool and something that we did. Looking back, it's weird how I thought that was normal. I just thought that was what kids did. You messed around with these things, and it was no big deal. That the spirit world wasn't something to be afraid of. So growing up in elementary school, in junior high, I had some family members who committed suicide, and that caused a lot of damage. I remember bringing it up to a pastor about the suicides, and the response I got made me decide right then and there that if God was real, I sure didn't want to have anything to do with him. These were my grandparents. These were my aunts and uncles. These were people that I cared about, and I thought if they're being punished eternally, then that isn't a God I want to be anything a part of. And as I was going through school, I started to use drugs around 12 years old. Started smoking marijuana, drinking, taking LSD. By the time I was 15, I was a mess. I was pretty depressed. My life was already starting to darken, and I didn't want to live with it anymore. And so I tried to take my own life right outside of Seward here on a gravel road in a car, ran it into an embankment, smashed my skull did a lot of damage, went through a lot of pain over the next few years, having facial reconstructions and just going through all of that. And I remember opening my eyes for that first time, and after the car accident, and seeing my family sitting at my feet, and the very first thought I had was, I cannot believe I lived. And I was very depressed, didn't want to be here. And so what that did is it opened the door for the enemy even more to move into my life and to speak to me even louder, and that was the voice that I listened to. And so after graduating high school, I got into college in Lincoln, and I found the heavier, harder drugs, and that was something that took me away from this feeling of worthlessness and this depression, or so I thought. It was a mask, and it was something that just temporarily relieved what I was going through. But early on, I was 18 years old, and I was doing cocaine and stuff like that, and that turned very quickly into an IV addiction, and started using it IV, and throughout that addiction, it just got stronger and stronger. I ended up having a couple kids, and but nothing mattered to me other than pleasing myself, the drugs, the feeling good, and the heavy metal, and just that lifestyle, that hardcore lifestyle. That's what I wanted to live, and I was living it. It was like, oh, I can do whatever I want and have no consequences. And at that time period, I got into what we called Wicca, which is witchcraft, and doing spells and things like that. Again, not knowing, because I wasn't a believer, I didn't know that what I was doing was worshiping the enemy. I was bowing down to the enemy of our souls, and that's who I invited in. I welcomed him in and wanted him in. And the more I did, the more I thought, man, people really they fear me, they respect me. It was a ruling with like a tyrant, and that's what I was like to everyone in my family, parents, siblings, and my children. That was who I was. I was a tyrant, and very, very abusive, very mean, and dark. So that started at the age of 18, went well into my 20s, into my 30s, and into the beginning of my 40s. I abused IV drugs for 25 years. I'm supposed to keep this under 10 to 15 minutes, so I'm trying to really fast track over, 25 years of addiction and what God has done since then and all that. So I'm trying to process everything and leave out a bunch of stuff. So so 25 years of IV addiction. In that process, as the years went on, I started to experience things that I just chalked it up to hallucinations, to this is what the drugs do, and this is normal. And looking back and knowing what I know now, how Jesus has opened my eyes, what I was experiencing were demons, real life demons. I talked with them. I conversed with them. I did spells with them. They were just a part of my life. It was very terrifying. I don't need to go into the details of that, but it was very, very terrifying, and which confused me because I just couldn't understand what was going on. And nothing in my life made sense anymore. I was experiencing all this spiritual stuff. Nobody else could see it. They would see the effects of it, but they just couldn't see it. And so I thought I was losing my mind, and thought I was going crazy. So about 7 or 8 years ago, I had someone that continuously asked me to go to Berean Church in Lincoln, and I was very adamant about the fact that I'm not going to go sit in church high, and I the way I viewed God was a very angry, mean God, the hellfire, brimstone type thing, and that's how I viewed God. And so I didn't want to go to church. And so this person continued to ask me to go to church. And so eventually I did, hoping that they would just stop asking me. And I went into that church, huge congregation, a bunch of people. I'm terrified of being around people. I don't like to be out in the daylight. My life was lived in a dark basement with a needle in my arm, so being out in public was not something I wanted to do. So I went into this church, and the pastor was speaking, out of thousands of people in the congregation, this pastor was speaking to me, about inner things about me that no one could ever know. And I thought it was a conspiracy. I thought the person that I was with had told everyone in the congregation my story, had told the pastor my story, and I was furious. I look back now and I laugh at it because that was my first experience with the Holy Spirit. But I went home and I abused that person to the point that I broke their vertebrae and their elbow, because I thought this was a huge conspiracy. Nobody could know this stuff. That opened a door that day. I started thinking, but what if it wasn't a conspiracy? What if God was real? What if God was speaking to me and trying to get my attention? So about a year and a half after that happened, life had really taken a bad turn for me. I lost all communication with my daughters. My one daughter was in college. The other one had already had a kid, and I hadn't had any communication with her for years. And I was living by myself in a really run-down apartment in Lincoln. Like I said, experiencing demons on a daily basis, struggling with a horrible drug addiction. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I felt like I kept hearing something that I just couldn't quite make out. And so I went back to that church, and I sought out a pastor. I wanted to talk to him about having a relationship with somebody who was dead. I didn't get it. How do you have a relationship? Everybody talks about this relationship with Jesus. How do you have a relationship with someone who's not here? How does that work? And without laughing at me, he was like, you're kind of not getting it. He's not dead, and he's right here with you. And so for the next 9 months, I met with this pastor. I downloaded a Bible app on my phone, and I started to read the Bible, started to seek God a little bit. It was sporadic. It wasn't like I did it daily, and I'd struggle back and forth with the drugs and with the, I just go back and forth between it all. And so after about 9 months, some things started to click, and I heard God for the first time very loud and clear, and he showed me my past, showed me these times where I'd lived through some pretty terrible stuff and the terrible things that I'd done to other people. But when he was showing me this, he was standing right there with me, and he kept telling me he loved me. That was very different than anything I'd ever experienced before. And it really opened my eyes to a different Jesus than I had remembered as a child. And he introduced himself as Jesus and showed me that he loved me no matter what. And so a few days later, I got a visit. I got a visit from I don't like to say his name, from the enemy, from the evil one. Showed up through another person and started offering me all kinds of things to continue to follow him. He reminded me that I had chosen him early on in life, and that I'd lived my life serving him, and wanted me to continue to do that. That was enough to absolutely terrify me, because for the first time in my life, I knew who I was talking to. I knew who I had been serving, and it was not the one I wanted to serve anymore. So that day I went to a church over by Lincoln High, got on my knees, and I prayed for God to take me out of the hell that I was living. God very specifically told me to call my dad, and I at the time didn't have a very good relationship with him anymore, and so my answer was no, I'm not going to do that. And God said, oh, but I need you to. I need you to trust me. And he, again, played these things back over to me, what he had shown me over the past 9 months. Like, he played them all over in my head, showing me that I could trust him, that he had shown me that he was trustworthy. And so I did. I contacted my dad and my stepmom, and they responded not at all the way I thought they were going to, and they invited me here, back to Seward, into their home that day. And that was kind of the beginning of my transformation. Being welcomed home was my very literal prodigal son moment. Changed my life. I heard when I did get back here and was invited into staying with my brother and moving in with my brother and starting my life over from scratch, I heard God say, I told you so. Trust me. That was 4.5 years ago. That first year was not very pleasant. My reality had been turned upside down. What I had believed was not real had been revealed to me to be very real. Also, I was working for the wrong side my whole life, and so I was terrified to do anything. I was scared of everything. And which is another reason why it's really weird that I'm up here talking to all of you, because this is so far out of my comfort zone. So I met who are now my best friends, Brian and Carrie Sermino. I was living right across the street from them, and Carrie did what every human being does to other people every day. Hey, how's it going? I was like, I am battling Satan. You have no idea. That was my first conversation with Carrie in the middle of the street. She didn't hesitate to come down and meet me in the street and hold my hands and pray over me. And, changed my life. God started placing the right people in my life. He did everything he promises to do, he does when you let go. I had to let go. I had to trust him. It took a huge leap of faith at the beginning, and I do it every day ever since. I want to mention Kurt, because at that time I was battling. I've had many conversations with the evil one. That I talked to you about just one that happened, but I've had many. And just like in Genesis, he is very good with his words, very deceptive. And so I ended up meeting with Kurt here in the church in his office and kind of told him what I was going through. And I can remember very much, because I told him all this. I was terrified. I couldn't sleep at night, was having all these nightmares. Told Kurt what's going on, and he responded with this big, huge smile. And I thought, oh, man, this guy's weird. Now he had this huge smile, and he opened up Genesis, and he showed me that what I was struggling with was some of the things the evil one had told me were lies, half-truths, and twisted truths. I remember that conversation very vividly, because I went home that day with a better understanding of why I was struggling so bad with what the devil had been telling me. Because some of it was true. He used half-truths. He used all these things. So part of my story and part of where I'm at today, I owe that to Kurt too. Like, he's another step in this journey. There's a ton of people and tons of things that have happened to get me where I'm at today. but Kurt was one of them. So from 4.5 years ago, I like I said, I left everything behind, gave away all my belongings, quit my job, everything, started completely over. 100% trusting God would provide. God has provided more than enough. He provided a job. In fact, I didn't have to go searching. He brought it to me. Someone in the community had heard that I was back in town and wanted to start over, and they offered me a job. And that led to about 3.5 years of working for him. And in that first year, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't pleasant. I would get a few months of sobriety, and I'd go back to it. And every time I'd use, I would talk to the devil every single time. And but they stuck with me. And in fact, they did quite the opposite of what anyone had ever done before. I tried to quit. The very last time I ever used any type of drug or anything, I tried to quit. And they said, no, we're not going to let you quit. That's what you've done your whole life. In fact, you're going to come to work, and you're not going to touch a single tool. You're not going to do a single thing but stand there. You're going to be embarrassed, and it's going to not be pleasant for you. But you're going to turn the corner. You're going to stop going to where you had always been. And so that changed my life. Someone invested in me when no one was ever willing to. And again, I heard God say, trust me. Just trust me. And so that job turned into a good thing for me. It helped me stay sober. Today I have 3.5 years clean and sober. God has opened up some amazing doors in my life. The other times that I've given my testimony, I haven't really had time to share what God has been doing. And so tonight I really want to make sure that everyone knows that it doesn't just stop there. So I get to now I'm now on staff for the Seward and York County drug courts, problem-solving courts, and along with Carrie Cermino, and I don't know if the judge is here tonight, but that is, God uses my life as if it was special forces training. Like I get to serve his kingdom by going back into the fire and helping those that I know about, the people that are dear to my heart. And so, thank you. And so that's just one of the things. I'm also part of CMA, Christian Motorcyclist Association, and I'm actually the chapter chaplain of all people. Here I am, a chaplain. I go to the state penitentiary and I visit actually some of my old drug dealers and stuff like that to share the gospel with them. And not only that, just to be there for them. They don't have anybody else who comes and does that. And so I just get to go do that now, and that's very important to me too. But God has healed my heart in so many ways. I wish I had a lot more time to explain to you everything that he has done and what he's doing in my life. He's even allowed me to marry my 10-year-long crush, Casey. We just got married October 8th. So I'm really blessed to be here. As much as this terrifies me, it's far more important to me to share my Jesus. This is my Jesus. This is the real deal. He is alive and well. He's doing things that you just could never explain. And so all praises to him.